Welcome to episode 10 and the season finale of season 2 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. Woo-hoo! I'm filmmaker Richard Di Gregorio.
And I'm still film watcher Greg Ralph.
So this episode, being our final, is the
21st Century Children's Playground.
The 21st Century Children's Playground.
I'm so glad I practiced that. And it's not unlike the end of our season 1 episode, which was really all about the joy of, cinema and filmmaking. And tonight's episode, 21st Century Playground, for those of you at home, is basically we're taking 3 films that tell grown-up stories, more or less, using the kind of, mechanisms or, technology of films that are more traditionally used for kids.
Yeah, that's right.
So whether that's animation of one form or another or puppets, but not for the kids this time, by and large.
So the first film we're going to discuss tonight is the 2003 film, The Triplets of Belleville.
And the second film we'll be doing is the 2015 film Anomalisa.
And then the third film we'll discuss is the 2004 film Team America World Police. So Greg, let's take us off with the first one there. Let's talk about The Triplets of Belleville.
Of course. Well, I seem to have become an accidental fan of modern French animation. It was only when I sat down to write this introduction that I realised how I've recently watched and enjoyed such films as 2013's Jack and the Cuckoo Clock Heart, 2012's wonderful Ernest and Celestine, 2011's A Monster in Paris, which, like this film, Triplets of Belleville, has songs sung by Mathieu Chedid, who sings the incredibly catchy title tune Belleville Rendezvous, and 2010's A Cat in Paris. And as far as I can tell, in my life at least, this new wave of French animation traces back to this 2003 film, The Triplets of Belleville. It's kind of hard to summarise this film. It begins with a nostalgic and wryly surreal visit to a 1930s New York, or Belleville, cabaret, starring Josephine Baker and Fred Astaire, and the triplets of the title. Then the narrative switches sharply to more recent history, where Madame Souza tries to engage her obviously orphaned grandson, Champion, through a pet dog and then toy trains and eventually elite-level cyclist training. But then Champion is kidnapped during what I think is the Tour de France and is shipped off to modern New York, Belleville, with other captive cyclists to power illegal gambling. Just don't ask. And then Madame Souza and Bruno the dog set off in hot pursuit, crossing the Atlantic on a paddle boat and meeting the now elderly triplets who help them carry out a daring rescue of Champion and another cyclist. So that's all very straightforward then. But beneath this simple surface, there's a lot going on, with clear references to animation and cinema, including to Walt Disney and other animation pioneers, French culture and history, and the consumerist culture of places like the US. And frankly, a lot of this is beyond me. You just have to go along for the ride, sometimes quite literally. But there's so much to enjoy along the way, with many touches of whimsy and surrealism in a largely dialogue-free story. Ricardo, to you, what did you think of this wonderful story?
Well, let me just first say, it's really refreshing to see some really quality 2D hand-drawn animation for a change.
Yes, it's pretty much gone the way of the dinosaur.
It has, absolutely. And I think mainstream cinema, it's all computer animated nowadays. But what really sticks out in sort of this film is the expression, the characterization and movement of the characters. It really stands out. But the film, okay, it's quite offbeat, odd.
Offbeat, that's a good word for it,
and
yes.
quirky. Okay, I think the story took a path that was really different to what I would have expected.
You hadn't seen this before, had you?
Never.
I
hadn't seen this. So it basically turned into a gangster kidnapping and rescue mission.
Sort of.
I felt it dragged a little, okay, and I didn't really know the point of the triplets being there in the story other than to just cause and provide some musicality and weirdness, like eating frogs every day. They're there, and it's called the Triplets of Belleville, but it's really not about them, and they're there just as sort of a, I don't know, I still don't know why they're there in the story, but they're great. But I think that's the whole point of what I felt about it. I knew I enjoyed it, and I did enjoy it, but I really didn't know what to make of it, and I still don't. And I've just mentioned the animation, and I think that is the real standout for me in the film. But I'm still, it's original.
Yes.
I think its story isn't that original in terms of where it goes. I think the whole kidnapping, you don't expect it to go there in that sort of suddenly he's in a Tour de France, the sun.
Well, actually, you never know what to expect.
No, you don't. But when it goes to that sort of plot-driven device, it suddenly becomes a bit formulaic. Like they're going to rescue him, and he's going to.
I mean, you're right.
I love. Look, the animation is amazing, and really, it is a standout. The whole Paris, I think it's Paris-scape and New York, is phenomenal. The artistry in the film is beautiful.
And some of the shots early on, there's a shot where the grandmother, Madame Souza, puts a model of the Eiffel Tower on their table and then puts his bicycle wheel on it and spins it to find out if it's all okay.
Yeah.
And the way the camera, it's supposed to go, pans around, and what looked like 3D actually, of that little Eiffel Tower and around again was just a highly memorable shot.
Well, it is very filmic in terms of the way they've structured the shots. It's almost like it's shot with a camera, but it's hand-drawn. But they've hand-drawn some of the shots like there's a fisheye lens or something on it, but it's a drawing. There's a lot of beauty to the film. Yeah, there's hardly any dialogue in it at all.
Very, very
little. And that's where I think the hour and 20 minutes does tend to drag a little bit. I found it did anyway.
I didn't. I just want to go back to your comment about it being offbeat.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of this little part, the only score you can possibly give this out of 10 is avocado. That's the kind of film it is. It's going to be very hard to rate in a lot of ways. But, no, look, I don't think it dragged. And I think partly, the first time I watched it, I was just like, where on earth is this going? And by the way, of the three films that we're talking about tonight, this is the only one that you could remotely consider watching with your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I did watch it with my family last time.
I watched it with my 7-year-old.
Yeah. And I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the novelty and the I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm on the ride kind of thing. And this second time, as you often do with these kinds of films that have more than one thing going on in it, I started to pick up on other stuff. Like I was noticing more, looking more. And so the mechanic, who's obviously meant to be Walt Disney, because he's got mouse-like features, he puts mouse ears on, and he looks a bit like Walt Disney.
Yeah.
And who is... there's obviously a few jokes at his expense because he's too short for his own passport photo, which seems to be saying something about his stature.
Yeah.
It's like there's a whole lot of stuff going on in this that has a deeper meaning, and I'm not sure, am I missing things or am I reading too much into this bit? It's that kind of film.
I will have to watch this again. I liked the journey. The journey was great. And like I said, the expression, that's what really sticks out for me with 2D. It's a shame that Disney have actually gotten rid of the 2D animation section of their business, because I think that's really sad. They came from that. That's their past.
Well, they're kind of following a trajectory at the moment because they're remaking all the animation films as live footage. So it's like they're trying to get more and more real. And yet their great renaissance originally was when they did things like The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin's Lamp.
Lion King as
yes,
well.
Were all the animation films, and then they started the whole Pixar thing.
Yes.
And then they've kind of now sort of moved into that lane.
Well, they've actually gotten rid of the 2D animation section of Disney, and I find that quite sad.
And there's a lot, and again, I was more attuned to it this time around. There's a lot in it just about the different styles of animation. So in the early sort of, flashback scenes to the 1930s cabaret, where you've got these lunatic things happening to Fred Astaire and Josephine Baker, the style of animation there is quite, I would say, deliberately reminiscent of very early Walt Disney, very early Looney Tunes, and in particular, I think, very early Mac Fleischer, Betty Boop kind of stuff. Not only the visual style, but the sense of humour about it.
Yeah.
And then
the big woman with the
with the
guy
husband stuck in the
backside,
and the way that the men leap out of the audience when Josephine Baker does the famous banana dance, and what they want is actually bananas, and they're all monkeys.
Yeah, that's right.
Or Fred Astaire eaten by his shoes. They're all that a more savage sense of humour maybe than back in the 1930s, but it's very much that ilk. And then we leap forward to the grandmother and her grandson, who's at that stage a young boy. And then I started, and I don't know if this is me or what was actually there, but I started thinking about more recent styles of animation, such as the Italian Allegro non troppo.
I haven't seen
or
that.
the American Bill Plimpton's The Tune, which I really like.
With all the music and so on.
So that style of animation was there. And then as it proceeded...
You're getting a lot of great animation and 2D animation coming in short films. And if you watch the Academy Award-nominated shorts or whatnot, you get a lot of beautiful different styles of animation, which is really refreshing. And I wonder why we're not seeing more feature-length movies with this animation, because there was some beautiful artistry. I mean, even Sean Tan's The Lost Thing, which was the short film version, was computer animated but hand-drawn. It was still 3D computer animated, but very well done.
Well, this was, I imagine, mostly hand-painted. But But you also had some 3D scenes in it, like the ocean liner going through the storm.
Yeah.
Was, I think, computer-generated. It was quite different in style.
Yeah, it was a bit different.
And then you go back to the hand-drawn, but once you're in the American, the consumerist culture of Belleville, again, it's almost, so exaggerated. Everyone is incredibly overweight.
Oh, incredibly overweight. That's one thing I noticed about this film.
Even the Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty, absolutely. Was quite overweight. It's saying something there.
And the scene at the end when they're beating the bad guys... And you see Belleville...
The gangsters, they're square.
They're like crates or coffins or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's just nice visual touches all the way through. But at the end, when they get defeated and they kind of blow up out of a smokestack on a ship, and they go across the sky of Belleville, and that's obviously Sleeping Beauty's palace at Disneyland with the fireworks. I mean, there's lots of stuff all the way through. At one stage in the triplets' apartment, as older women, that you see a few times posters for Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, French. Yeah, it's not animation, but that slapstick kind of style. So there's all these things that keep popping up, and not knowing enough about French culture and history, I don't quite follow it, but I kind of want to.
There's some wonderful scenes in there as well. I love the scene where the grandmother is actually training her grandson for the Tour de France or for cycling, and they get home and he's really tired. He collapses on the table. And she grabs a vacuum cleaner out and massages his muscles with a vacuum cleaner.
And then an egg beater.
And then an egg beater. And then a
lawnmower.
A lawnmower on the push lawnmower on the chest and the back. It's hilarious. There's some great originality in there.
And there's all that whimsy, but there is a real heart to this. So just before that scene, when she's trying to engage her grandson, and there are hints that his parents have both died somehow, and that she's inherited him. And, in these scenes with no dialogue, and you know exactly what's going on, you know how she feels about him, the tenderness that persists into his adult life, but she's just so devoted to him, and yet she never says a word. I mean, that is craftsmanship.
Yeah, but she does it without even questioning anything. When he gets kidnapped, she just goes after him. Yeah. She follows him. She goes on a boat and
she steals the boat.
Steals the boat, yeah. And for £1, and goes across the ocean to follow him, following an ocean liner. It is great. It is well done.
And there are gross things, like there is no food in this film which is attractive.
No, none of it.
So in their home at the start, and then in the triplets' apartment where they're doing, they're basically eating frogs and tadpoles in a different way, and you're sitting there thinking, gross.
Gross. Absolutely gross. When the sons are eating his meal at the end of a training session, and it's just this slop. You go, ugh, it's just disgusting.
I also like the way, particularly around the triplets, how the film sets up questions in your mind, like, why is she going fishing at night to get their food and carrying an umbrella? Or why isn't Madame Souza allowed to touch the fridge or the newspaper, the vacuum cleaner?
That's right.
And then you get the payoff later on.
You get the payoff,
it makes sense. And you go, okay, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, no, actually not obviously in the slightest. But yeah, it's just whimsical but with heart, and a sense that there's something much deeper going on that I just don't quite get.
No, not yet anyway. I think it's going to take quite a few more viewings. It's definitely worth a watch. You've got to see this film. I'm surprised it's taken me this long to see it.
And the song is fantastic.
Oh, the song is brilliant, yeah. Exactly.
It's so catchy. Yeah. And there's an English version and a French version too. So, what do you want to give this film?
I'm giving it 7 out of 10. Okay, for its artistry, I mean, I think I'll probably give it a higher score once I see it a few more times. And I love the dog in it as well, by the way. I love the dog.
The dog's a character. And the dog dreams in black and white.
Dreams in black and white. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, but the other thing about this film is the grandson's character isn't as fully realised as Bruno the dog. You get a better sense of him as a young boy.
Yeah.
And once he's the cyclist, he's almost a nothing character.
That's actually really true. I find he was really, you warm to him at the very beginning.
Yes.
And then suddenly, as the adult, he's nothing. He's got no expression. He's really nothing. That's not. He turns into
he's her motivation and nothing else.
And nothing else. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, actually, I am on a 7 out of 10, even though it's my second viewing. I'm a little bit frustrated by it because there is this other meaning that I can't access. And I actually tried Googling it to see, is there some kind of commentary that will help me at least enter into this? I found one thing that was very earnest and going terribly, terribly deep, and I kind of gave up on that. But there was nothing else that kind of gave me an entry point to it, and I want that entry point. And I don't know if it's because it's a language culture thing, or is it because they don't want to give too much away, and yet it's trying to say stuff. So I'm a little frustrated by that, but I just love the whimsy, the heart, the inventiveness.
Yeah, it's great. And it's one thing's quite refreshing in it actually as well is it's a kids' film. It's got guns, people smoke, people drink.
People get shot. The cyclist gets taken out the back and shot. And
it's
like a horse.
It's quite un-PC in that way for nowadays. My 7-year-old had no problem with it.
Well, I think it's because we're out of the American paradigm that the things that are acceptable or not acceptable are different, and that's refreshing. Well, now for the second activity in our children's playground of the 21st century. Ricardo, why don't you tell us about Anomalisa?
Okay, Anomalisa. Written by Charlie Kaufman and directed by Duke Johnson and Charlie Kaufman, this 2015 animated film centres itself around a middle-aged best-selling author and customer service guru, Michael Stone, voiced by David Thewlis, who is in a bit of a crisis. Finding life quite mundane, monotonous and uninteresting, he becomes a man unable to interact deeply with other people, who are all starting to sound exactly the same. Everyone, including his wife and child. On a business trip to Cincinnati, he tries to connect with an old flame and try to spark something, but it falls horribly flat. It's not until he meets Lisa, Jennifer Jason Leigh, a fan of Michael's book, who doesn't sound like everyone. He's captivated by her. He invites her back to his room, and they get to know each other in more awkward ways than one, which ignites ideas about running away and being together. He thinks she's an anomaly, so nicknames her Anomalisa. Michael then suffers a breakdown. Lisa's voice begins to sound like everyone else's, and he alienates everyone at the conference he's come for. This is a really interesting film, and unlike any others I've seen. The stop-motion animation is very real, and the puppets are quite unique. They were apparently created using 3D printers with multiple copies of each character, with 18 Michaels and 6 Lisas created. The animators studied human movement and facial expressions and moved the puppets frame by frame. The result is amazing to look at. At times I was wondering why they didn't just use real actors here, but Charlie Kaufman believes the animation draws attention to the small details that viewers would otherwise not notice in live-action film, and I tend to agree. Other than the 2 leads, every other character is voiced by Tom Noonan. Now, this device was very weird on my first watch, as I didn't really know much about the film. I was wondering what was going on. It took me out of the film, actually. On repeat viewing, however, this device suddenly worked because I understood the reasons why. Now, I can't say that I loved this film, but I found it different and new, which is refreshing nowadays when mainstream cinema can feel the same as another film and the same as another film. Much like Michael Stone, he is the same voice. I think Charlie Kaufman is arguably the best writer in cinema at present. His other films, such as Being John Malkovich, Adaptation, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, show his natural ability to write such original material. Greg, what did you think of Anomalisa?
I sat down to watch this with my wife and my sister-in-law who was visiting. And my sister-in-law, all the way through the start of the film, was saying, why is this animated? Why is this animated? And I didn't have an answer for her. And eventually they actually both gave up.
Wow, they gave up on it?
Oh, yeah, and I kept going. And I eventually realised, it's interesting what you say about the animation, Charlie Kaufman saying it makes you focus on details you might not otherwise. But the other thing that you didn't mention is that as well as all being voiced by Tom Noonan, all but the two main characters have the same face.
Yes, they do.
And
yeah,
that
right.
would be
You're
very
right.
hard to do. I mean, they've done it before in Being John Malkovich, but to sustain a whole film with that
Yes.
and make it not look, well, it looks odd anyway, but not look really odd, I think would be hard to do in another medium. And did you hear about where the faces came from for all the puppets?
Where did they come from?
So the face of Michael is the face of the ex-brother-in-law of the co-director, Duke.
Oh, okay.
The face of Lisa was the face of an actress that one of the producers saw in a cafe.
Oh, wow.
And the face of everyone, so all the other characters got
Yes.
different hair and beards and heights and so on. Although I think everyone was Anglo, which is interesting.
How did you find the voices, though? How did you find that voice, that device, when you first watched it?
Well, I've only watched it once.
Okay, and how did you find it?
I knew about it. I must have read the back cover or something. I knew that was going to happen. I didn't know about the faces.
Right.
So
I didn't know any, I didn't know
that
much at
took
all.
time to dawn on me. But where they got the every man or the every person face from was that they took photos of a whole lot of people who worked at the studio and formed an amalgam out of all those faces to get the everyone face. Look, I was looking forward to this film.
Yeah, so
I was really looking forward to it. And I put it off for a while. You and I have talked about it. I must watch this film at some stage. And I'm a big fan of two of the films he's written. I love Being John Malkovich, and I really love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And they're both due for another viewing. It's been a while. I've been bored by some of his other films. I was bored by Synecdoche, New York,
I haven't seen that one.
and Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
I enjoyed that one.
Both of those I gave up on.
Adaptation?
Well, I was going to say, and I was mystified by why adaptation got such a buzz. I just,
wow.
I couldn't get it. But the trailer that I'd seen a few times for Anomalisa had intrigued me, and I was really, it looked beautiful. I was looking forward to seeing it. And it's a seriously weird film. And I think the best thing about this film is the craftsmanship. And after I watched the film, I watched a few of those extras that talk about the making of the film.
That's right.
And the dedication of the people who worked on this, sometimes under quite arduous circumstances, is amazing.
It takes quite a long time to do it. It was in production for 2 years, so it requires so much patience. Stop motion animation, that a lot of patience I don't have in terms of the in the filmmaking process.
I couldn't do it.
But the expressions are so amazing.
Look, the skill of the whole exercise, but particularly some of the little movements. And I'm going to say this very carefully, having just said little movements, but the scene when Michael gets out of the shower.
Yes.
And his penis kind of just moves, and it looks real. And when they take clothes off, like a jacket on the back of a chair or something, or throw it onto the bed, that looks real.
It does.
Every now and then there was a little clunky thing, but the life that was given to these characters, and I agree with you, there were times when I had to remind myself, this isn't real, this is puppetry, because it was so skillfully done.
It really was.
And so that the skill of that, the craftsmanship, and the ideas in its execution, such as this actor Tom Noonan, who does a fantastic job, being all the voices and all the faces of everyone but two, that's really skillful. But I got bored. I got bored with the story.
Okay.
I think this film could be a lot shorter, a lot tighter.
It's an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think you could cut it down to an hour, even a bit under an hour.
No, I wasn't bored by it. It is... Look, I know that there's been some criticism... I mean, look, it's been called a masterpiece. It's got a lot of great reviews, and it was Oscar nominated as well.
I know. And it should be for the craft.
Yes, but I know some people have said, well, gee, his life is quite, like mundane and boring and uninteresting. Why do you have to make the film a bit uninteresting and boring? And I didn't find it boring, though. I didn't. I watched it a second time. I got into it. I expected it to be a slow-moving film, a very human story. So I don't know. I prepared myself for it. So I didn't find it dragged or anything.
See, when you've got films like Being John Malkovich and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and you have another director come in. So one of those was Spike Jonze. Who did the other one?
Oh, that was Michel Gondry.
Yes, thank you. Yes, exactly. So they bring something else to it that I think levens out some of the weight of what I think is Charlie Kaufman's natural kind of narrative and style and themes. So, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind has some wonderful moments in it.
It is a wonderful film.
The scene in the bookshop where all the titles are disappearing off the books as memories are erased.
That is quite an amazing movie.
And so I've really got to see it again. But I felt like this is one of those films. I know that he co-directed with Duke. What was the other guy's name?
Johnson.
Duke Johnson, thank you.
Who's an animator? Yeah.
Yeah, that I think it probably needed a stronger personality than maybe his co-director was. I don't know the guy. But someone like a Spike Jonze or Michel Gondry to come in and kind of broaden it a bit or make it more palatable or deepen or something that I got bored.
Deeper? It's pretty deep.
Yeah, deep is wrong.
Yeah.
It's about making it more consumable.
Okay.
That's
sure
not quite
thing.
right either.
Yeah, okay.
It's such a well done thing, but I think its audience will be limited to people who, like Jean-Paul Sartre and the pain of existentialism, or who like The Craft, and The Craft is really worthy of admiration and respect and love, but I just don't think it's ever going to have the huge audience. I think there are critics who absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I'm not on the list. I just wanted something that
like I said,
there.
I can't say that I love the movie, but I really appreciate it a lot, actually. And I really appreciate the human... It's very human and very real in a unreal environment. And that really works. I think we haven't talked about this yet, but the sex scene in it...
I was just about to get to that, yeah.
Which is quite awkward, but very realistic. I think it's one of the most realistic sex depictions of a sex scene on screen. But it's puppets, but it's so unreal, and I love that.
And we're going to talk next about Team America World Police,
yeah.
that also has a puppet sex scene with a completely different dramatic intent.
That's right.
It's comedy, and I understand that the scene in Anomalisa, which their sex scene, was done almost in opposition to the Team America one. So one played very broadly for laughs and dolls jiggling against each other, and another one that's done very seriously, very much trying to ground it in reality, as you say, and produce something awkward and tender in that moment.
Yeah, I think there's amazing moments in this, and I liked it actually a lot more the second time I watched it. I'll watch this again and again. I really liked the movie.
I don't know, but I will. But there were touches that I really liked. So when he arrives at the hotel is called Hotel Frejoli.
Yeah.
And it's spelt F-R-E-G-O-L-I. And I understand that I think it's pronounced Frugoli maybe, the Frugoli delusion is the belief that, it's a psychological delusion where someone believes that everyone in the world except themselves is the same person in disguise. And that's because they just can't connect with them, they can't empathise. And so they go into this state, which is basically what Michael's living in the film. So the fact that the hotel's named after that, but that name is turned into Frejoli, which means fresh and pretty in French, it's a marvellous touch. And so I really admire Kaufman as a writer. I just don't think I admire him as a director.
Yeah,
despite the superb craft in this.
What I find is I'm quite interested in the way this was funded as well. This was funded through Kickstarter.
Yep.
Which in part, which is the crowdfunding. Now, I really love that because I don't know whether a studio in the beginning would go for this sort of film because it is quite fresh and new. So to start it on a crowdfunding platform is great. I think it's really that's what I really love about the crowdfunding aspect of filmmaking because people can get behind it and it makes people take notice.
Yes, but it doesn't necessarily result in a good film.
It doesn't.
So
it doesn't. But if you've got Charlie Kaufman though,
I know, but you think about Snakes on a Plane or the Veronica Mars film, and which I have to say neither of which I've seen. But
I saw Snakes on a Plane.
Did you like it?
Oh, look, it was a bit of fun. It was not amazing.
Yeah, but... so I kind of wonder whether there's actually a virtue to the studio system in acting as a filter. And sometimes it filters out really good stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I think, other times there's a role to play.
But the risk associated with a film like this is a lot for a studio. So
yeah, I know, I get that.
So any fresh ideas coming through, I think is great for them to take those actually get on board. I mean, it wasn't a massive budget on the movie. I think it was $8 million. I think it was, which is not a massive budget, but which is quite small considering the look of the animation and how amazing it looked
and the sets
and everything. Bravo! It was awesome. So what are you going to give it, Greg? I'd like to know.
I'm going to give it a 6.
Wow.
Okay. It's probably a low 6. I was sort of teetering on 5.
A low 6?
Yeah, the marks I give it are for the craft, the animation.
Yeah.
But the story just...
You didn't get into the human element of the story at all? You didn't feel for him at all?
Well, I did, and then I kind of got over it. I didn't feel like there was enough to really carry me on with it.
An hour and 15 minutes.
And I don't think I'll watch it again, frankly.
Wow. I watched it twice. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Look,
it's only one mark difference.
No, but I couldn't... Yeah, but that actually, a 6 to a 7 is quite a big difference.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, it really is. And I was... Look, I could not... If I could not give it a 6, I really couldn't. And then I was thinking... I couldn't give it an 8 either, because that sort of pushes it into another realm. And so I had to stick with a 7, and I had to stay there. But I really liked it. And I think this one is a really good movie. I think everybody should see it.
No, I don't think everybody should see it.
I think they should. I think it's a really good
I think everybody could watch parts of it to get it.
It's fresh. You know, when the Emoji Movie's out, when the Emoji Movie is playing at the cinemas at the moment, please see Anomalisa.
So, are you going to take your young child to see this?
I already have.
Anomalisa?
No.
That's what I mean. So
no,
you can't
the Emoji Movie.
You cannot compare the Emoji Movie with this because they're different audiences.
I understand, but it's just... Anyway, I think it's great. So the third film we're going to be discussing here is the 2004 film Team America World Police.
And this is a good one to end the season on, I think. Look, I'm a big fan of Jerry Anderson's puppet shows from my childhood, the Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet in particular. And unlike many people apparently, I'm also a fan of the 2004 live-action film of Thunderbirds. And curiously, that same year saw the release of this film, Team America World Police, from the team behind such shows as South Park and The Book of Mormon. This is a very crass take on American culture and world politics, using Jerry Anderson's puppetry approach, but probably with a fair bit of CGI thrown in as well. It's also a highly quotable film that you're either going to love or hate. You're more likely to love it if you're a US college student. You're less likely if you like a nice art house film starring Dame Judi Dench or have an aversion to full-on swearing or puppet sex. And sadly, I don't seem to be in the second category of the art house film lovers because I like this film. In the film, Gary Johnson is a multilingualist who is one of the best actors ever. He is recruited by a government agency named Team America World Police to crack a terrorist conspiracy in Cairo, filling a gap in their team from their recent saving of Paris from a terrorist conspiracy. Gary is instantly smitten with his new colleague, Lisa, another Lisa puppet, interestingly, a cross between Thunderbird's Lady Penelope and Terminator's Sarah Connor. Although they share a soulful sex interlude early in their relationship, and yes, I'm using the word soulful very loosely here, there are some action and emotional barriers that Gary, Lisa, and the other team members need to overcome before they can get their happy ever after, including whether Gary actually is a good enough actor to save the world. The filmmakers are obviously enjoying themselves tremendously, bringing in puppet caricatures of many Hollywood activist celebrities. The highlight of the film is without doubt a torch song solo by the then leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-il, and there are people across the globe right now singing, "I'm so lonely." The film was made in the shadow of the 9/11 attacks of 2001. But one of the interesting viewings this time around is how topical the film has suddenly become, as Kim Jong-il's son squares off against the US president in so-called real life. Ricardo, how did you go with Team America? And do not say in response the lyrics of that first song.
It really goes there, this film, doesn't it? It really goes
where
there.
Is there?
Yeah, it pushes. It's very crude. I love this film. Okay, firstly, I love the film. I think I laugh out loud every time I watch it.
And I watched it this time around with my 16-year-old son who'd never seen it but wanted to.
What did he do?
And my 20-year-old nephew who had seen it before. And, you know, it's a boys' film. This is really a boys' film.
It really is. But it really does poke fun at the summer blockbuster, you know. They really poke fun at, say, a Michael Bay film. Michael Bay directed, you know, big action, Transformers, Bad Boys 1, Bad Boys 2, Pearl Harbor, and they have a good song to Pearl Harbor in there.
Oh, they really get stuck into Pearl Harbor.
Oh, they really do.
And Ben Affleck.
And Ben Affleck. And also montages.
Oh, montage.
The montages.
You need a montage.
From the sets, which in France at the very beginning, in Paris, you've got croissant laid, streets.
Well, actually, no, even before that, the opening scene is a string puppet in front of a little kind of sketchy background of Paris. And you think, oh, is this the film? And then it pans back and you see that that's actually a street busker in this amazingly elaborate set of Paris.
Oh, and
with the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, and
the artistry of this film is actually very good. It's amazing. They recreate Times Square, New York, and I love all the Middle Eastern country. They're all desert. and they all talk like jihad.
Well, at that stage, I had the subtitles on to work out what they were saying, and they didn't give it the subtitles. You just had to absorb it.
But the songs are so good as well. This is a musical, and a very funny musical. From the stage play on Broadway, Lease, which is a takeoff of Rent, with Everyone Has AIDS.
And the lyrics are just, my grandma's got AIDS, my boss has got AIDS, my dog has got AIDS.
And also, I think it really pokes fun at that activism in Hollywood. You've got the Film Actors Guild.
Yes,
FAG.
And that made my 16-year-old laugh. giggle every time that came up. The script was called FAG.
So you've got Susan Sarandon, all of the activists. You got Sean Penn and
Matt Damon,
Tim Robbins. Matt Damon,
who only says Matt Damon.
He does. Matt Damon actually thought that was brilliant. But there was a reason behind that. Did you know there was a reason?
I feel like I knew it and I've forgotten.
Yeah. Apparently, he thought it was brilliant. He never really understood it, but apparently he heard in an interview with Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators, that they said that the puppet for Matt Damon came in looking kind of mentally deficient and they didn't have time to change it. So they just made him just say, Matt Damon.
Well, after I watched this the other night, I looked up the deleted scenes. And there's a scene, when all the the FAG activists are in their kind of little United Nations building and all saying we've got to be taken seriously. Well, there was a scene that was cut out where the Ben Affleck puppet was just like a suit with a hand coming out like a naked Muppet. Just the hand going from side to side to talk. That he was such a bad actor, he couldn't even be a puppet. They do not like Ben Affleck.
They don't like actors in general, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They don't use a lot of real actors in their voices in South Park, in their movies. They don't. And so look, I've watched a few of their films now. I've seen a movie called Orgasmo, which is their take on the porn industry, and that's very clever. It's very well done. It's a very funny film, if you can check that one out. But obviously
not for the kids.
None of this is for the kids. I mean, this really goes.
Actually, this film is so not for the kids.
This is crude. This is very crude, and it really goes. And it's offensive.
Crass.
It's completely offensive. It's racist.
Well, even calling the group fag. I mean, that is offensive.
It's so offensive, and it really goes there. But you know what? It goes there. People are going to like it. They're going to dislike it. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, I don't really think care. Their audience is their audience, and either you're going to laugh or you're going to just turn it off and hate it. But I think it's very funny. I think it's fun to poke fun at, the North Korea situation or anything like that. I think you have to laugh sometimes and make some fun of these dramatic scenarios.
If the highlight of the film is Kim Jong-il's wonderful song,
I'm So Romery,
what's the low point of the film for you? Because I have one very clearly in mind.
When the actor goes down on...
No, it's when Gary is at the low point of his life. He feels responsible for a whole lot of deaths caused by the terrorists.
Yes.
And he goes to a bar and he gets the life-changing advice I'm just not prepared to repeat from the guy in the bar about 3 types of people in the world, which he uses to save the day at the end.
No.
You right there?
Yes. I know which bit you're going to say.
Yeah, and then he goes out to the back of the alleyway and he just starts vomiting.
One of my favourite points. Crack up laughing.
He vomits and he vomits. And, there's obviously some kind of funnel and pipe down the body of this puppet where just this vomit just keeps coming out. And the first time I watched it, I was doing that classic thing of covering my eyes and thinking, this can't still be going, and then peering through my fingers and seeing it still going, covering my eyes, and going through the whole cycle, because it was just so gross. I was like, please stop.
It is gross, but it is very, very funny. You might look at this film and say, it's a bit of crass entertainment, but this is very well constructed. They are very, very intelligent writers, and they know what they're doing. So... every line and everything it comes out for a reason. It's written and it's thought about.
And as I say, it's very quotable.
Very quotable. They're very intelligent and smart smart entertainers.
Yeah, there are distinct contrasts between this and Anomalisa. So in
very much
Anomalisa, there are times when you quite forget that they are puppets. You know, it's done so skillfully, even though they draw attention to the fact they're puppets because of the joins on the faces, which are quite deliberate. Whereas in this, Thunderbirds kind of film, it's quite clear that everything is a puppet.
Everything,
it's all fake.
you see the strings.
The sex
and
scene,
everything like that.
the sex scene is, unbelievable. It's funny. It's crass, it's funny, but it's unbelievable. But there was one moment, actually, when I was touched by emotion, and that's after about halfway through the film when I think the Panama Canal is blown up.
Yes.
And the dam collapses and water washes out, and all these puppets are like clinging onto lampposts and so on. And that's, I wouldn't say it's funny, but it's in the spirit of the film. But then there's a moment where the puppet bodies are kind of washing away, and I actually felt a little bit sad at that point. It touched me. But that was the exception in the film.
I'm amazed you got touched by Team America World Police.
You want to rephrase that?
Well, yeah.
It was a moment.
It's a moment you felt in the offendathon of this film.
and again, we've sort of already touched on it, but the celebrity cameos, and when they all had to be defeated by the heroes using
they're all on the side of King Jong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're defeating them with Japanese swords and fire and was it a bomb or something?
Yeah.
And they're getting horribly decapitated. And there's a moment in the middle of that where the hero and one of the other team members encounter Susan Sarandon, who's got her hands tied behind her back, sitting in a box and saying, "Oh no, I realised they were all wrong and they tied me up, and I want to help you." And the other team members saying, "Oh, okay," and then Gary Johnson says, "No, she's acting."
She's an actor.
And he says to Susan Sarandon, "I'm sorry, Susan, but, as you get older, your acting powers are waning."
Yeah, that's right.
And then she basically goes off the balcony and gets splattered below.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the splattering below.
But
the very beginning, I love the scene at the very beginning when you've got the Team America, they come in and they're in France. These terrorists are setting up a bomb to go off in Paris. And this one little case, this little suitcase, that they put somewhere, and they come in and they blow up Paris. They try and get these terrorists. They blow up the Eiffel Tower,
which falls over and destroys the Arc de
Triomphe. They destroy
everyone's
Paris.
shooting with machine guns in every direction. But none of the citizens get hurt. Did you notice?
No one does. And then. Oh, they do. The puppet.
The terrorists all die.
They always die. They get shot as well.
They all keep running through the bullets. I don't think any of the citizens actually died.
Oh, I thought the mime did.
The city was trashed. No, I don't know that any of them did.
But then the city's trashed, and then they say, "Everybody calm down. Look, we've stopped the terrorists. We've stopped the terrorists." While the Paris is just burning.
In effect, they've actually been the terrorists themselves.
That's right.
And amped it to the nth degree.
That's right.
Something I noticed this time around is that the door is very clearly left open at the end. That they could make a sequel if they wanted. And I've spoken to a few people in the last 24, 48 hours since I rewatched the film who all, the men, they all light up when you mention this film and they start quoting it.
Yes.
And as was I. But then a couple of people have said, they must be thinking of a sequel right now. I mean, the current world
climate
situation is so, arcing back. And it's not just the fact that it's North Korea and that things are very serious.
And North Korea.
But the gung-ho attitude, Donald Trump. But now you've again got George Clooney involved and Alec Baldwin and the same actors, celebrities,
that's right,
who are actually, somewhere in this story as well.
Yeah.
It's just itching for a sequel.
It is. Could you imagine seeing a nice puppet Donald Trump?
Yes, well, that'd be fun in its own right.
That's right.
And what he might turn out to be. But, quite clearly, I don't want to spoil it, but the character that is Kim Jong-il could actually quite happily now be the son.
Yes, absolutely.
It does hold up, it has cohesion as a story.
It does. From start to end. I don't think it drags at all.
So for this piece of political incorrectness, what are you going to score
I'm
it?
giving it an 8 out of 10.
Oh, okay. I'm on a 7.
Yeah.
There were a couple of bits that, are starting to date, like the celebrities. My son, okay, that's Samuel L. Jackson. I know who he is. I know who George Clooney is. Some of them now, and Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but some of them, like Tim Robbins and Janine
Garofalo. Yeah, that's a
and
big
even
debut.
Susan Sarandon. He hasn't got a clue who they are. So it's the fact it's so topical wears it down a little bit. And it is very, very gross, and I just don't feel I can put it on a pedestal. Some of the other 8s I've given, but it's if you're in the right frame of mind and it's you're not easily offended. This is a really good night.
Well, I think if you're not easily offended and you're into this sort of humour, the Trey Parker and Matt Stone humour, it is an 8 out of 10 for me. I just think it's very well done and it's up there for me. So that concludes episode 10 and the season finale of season 2 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast.
And so as we say goodbye to season 2.
I know. Look, we will be doing a season 3, so that's fantastic. We can announce that. We will be doing a season 3.
Have you spoken to my agent?
Yeah.
Okay, that's news to me.
Greg, how have you found season 2?
Well, I was looking back at what we've covered in season 2, and I think I have a few highlights. One of them is a profound sense of guilt, because you've brought tenderly and lovingly these films that are very close to your heart, and I haven't liked them, I'm sorry. So, and there's 3 that come to mind. One obviously is Dr. Zhivago.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is an absolute favourite of yours. A recent one was the Italian film Remember Me, My Love. And of course, much earlier in the season, Showgirls. And I'm sorry, Showgirls,
Look,
I'll give my lowest mark to now, half a mark out of 10.
Look, I wasn't that kind to Romulus, my father, either. When you
All the last
loved
5 years, I think.
All the last 5 years. So it was, I think there's been a bit of doing and throwing there.
Oh, in that case, you deserved it.
I think one of the highlights for me actually was the horror episode. Just to
Well, I was going to say,
actually watching
I
the
discovered
horror
Scream.
movies.
I've got to go and finish Scream 4 still, actually, but I watched the first 3.
I'm amazed at that.
Yeah, I'm a wee bit amazed too. And
Well, I got you in on it. He was dreading the horror episode.
I was. And I'm also, we've gone back and watched 2 films that I haven't seen for ages. Actually, I'm not sure I even saw Sunset Boulevard before, but, the pleasure of watching superb films like Sunset Boulevard and The English Patient.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed watching or rewatching those. And just in the last few weeks, I think it is, we reviewed earlier this year that documentary Wiener about the politician caught sexting. Well, that story is still going out in the news.
It is, as of today, we heard.
Yeah,
today.
and it reminds me of the topicality of that story. In fact, that story really hasn't finished yet.
No, it hasn't.
But looking at documentaries, which I said at the time is not my genre, and yet they were very interesting films. I still really love the stories we tell.
Yeah,
that we watch them.
And you really love Salam Cinema, that's right, Naz.
Oh, that was the other one. Sorry, that was what I should have written down the list of films that Ricardo loves that I slammed. Yeah.
But I think a real highlight for this season, and I really enjoyed the challenge of it, was the One Take Wonder episode when we reviewed Birdman.
Oh, that's right, and Russian Ark.
And Russian Ark and
Rope. That will probably be one of, I think, our best episodes ever. That it was such fun to do, and I think that the fun that we had did get captured, in the podcast itself. That was, I'd forgotten we did that this season, but that was a really great one. I've been keeping track of the scores that you and I give to each film in season 1 and season 2, and both of us have become harder markers in season 2 than season 1. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
Or the fact that I seem to be a harder marker than you in general,
right.
but we've both moved in that direction. So whether we're getting better at it or a bit less patient with some kinds of films, I don't know, but it's certainly a direction that we're going in. So in season 12, I expect we give everything zero, basically.
Well, again, thank you for listening to our podcast. Please, tell your friends about it. Hopefully they can subscribe and enjoy our podcast as well.
So if everyone who currently subscribes to the podcast could just persuade 2 friends each, not the same 2 friends, that'd be silly, but 2 friends each to subscribe and ideally listen to
and listen to
the
it.
podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That would just help it get out there because we have a lot of lovers.
And also review us on iTunes as well, or rate us or review us on iTunes.
Yeah, all that modern stuff.
It really makes a difference. It really does.
We're having a little celebratory drink, and anyone who knows me knows that I usually don't drink.
I don't know that, but here we go.
Season 2, salute.
Salute, and enjoy.